since entering the league in 2012. But I want to focus on Jason Tatum now. Some would say it was a night to forget for Tatum, despite getting his shot back in the game, too, at least in the first half. Tatum took just 3 shots in the second half and finished a minus 36 overall. It's his worst plus-minus in any game of his career. 6 plus-minus is also the worst in finals history in the 2 decades the stat has existed in basketball. So I'll start with you here, Stephen A. How much of the Game 2 loss is on Tatum?
Well, obviously some of it is on him because he's their best player. But the flip side to it is that I think collectively, guys, I just got the impression that the Boston Celtics were like, we got what we came for. We wanted to steal home court advantage. We won Game 1. So the level of urgency that we saw from them in the second half of Game 1, particularly even after they were down by 15 points in Game 1 in the third quarter, and they stormed back, that level of urgency did not exist last night. Just being there in person, just seeing what I saw, I just didn't feel like the same level of fervent energy and urgency that they had in Game 1 was present last night. And that's the only thing to me that explains it. I know that Golden State stepped up its defense. They were tenacious. They were switching. They were getting in everybody's faces. They were contesting everything. They were like piranhas out there at certain points, and I get all of that. But to me, when you're the best player and you're a top 10 player in the game, there's no excuse in an NBA Finals game that you only attempt 3 shots in the second half when it was a 2-point game at halftime. And so I look at it from that standpoint, and the only thing that I deduce from it is a level of complacency. I think a lot of people on the Boston Celtics can be accused of that last night. It's not something I think will be present once they go back to Boston. It certainly won't exist as the series wanes. But I think last night that clearly appeared to be the case, that the Boston Celtics were a team that were playing like we did what we came to do by winning Game 1 and claiming home court advantage. So we're good, and I think it showed in their play.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you on the Tatum point, and I'll get into that in a second. But I am going to push back a little bit on the point that they were complacent. I mean, it was a 2-point game at halftime, Stephen. I think one of the
I'm in second half.
Okay. Oh, just okay.
Yeah, just second half.
I don't think they came out of the halftime being like, all right, we're up to, or whatever. It was a 2-point game. We already got one. We're good going back to Boston 1-1. I look at this more like what the Warriors did in that third quarter, specifically the barrage of jump shots from Jordan Poole and Stephen Curry. That ultimately is a momentum driver, especially at home. And they started knocking down those shots. And on the other side of the basketball, you have to give the Warriors credit. Like, it's not like the Boston Celtics weren't trying to score. You know, they had I believe they had more turnovers than field goals in that third quarter. The big difference I saw between the second half of Game 2 and the second half of Game 1, if you go back to that fourth quarter when they were knocking down those shots, their rotations were all a step slow. The dribble buys, the second help defender coming over, he was a step slow. The kick pass, the X guy, the rotation of that was a step slow. On every swing, they got an open shot. There wasn't a defender within 8 feet in Game 1. Last night, in that third quarter, their rotations were on point. They did such a good job of running the Boston Celtics off the 3-point line and then bringing in second, third help defenders and then rotating back out. So I don't think this was the Boston Celtics being complacent. I think this was a masterful third quarter performance from the Golden State Warriors. And ultimately, Tatum's not going to come back in that game in the fourth quarter for very long because of the nature of the score and obviously going back the rest of the way. And the other point I wanted to make about Tatum, look, he had a little bit of an up and down game. And the one thing that I keep talking about is the decision making. We talk about the turnovers all the time. But so far in this series, of any player that shot 5 or more shots, he's got the worst shot quality, according to Second Spectrum, of any player in this series. So he's got to stop settling. There's too many times where he has a smaller defender on him. He settles for that step-back jumper, contested. There's too many times where he's got a smaller defender on him, and he's using that James Harden rip-through, trying to draw a foul, and throws up a bad shot or makes a turnover. He's got to be better. And the last point I wanted to make about the original question regarding how much of this is on Tatum, we have all said this in the last 20 minutes. Ultimately, role players are going to help decide this series. And Derek White, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, they were phenomenal in Game 1. Those 3 guys combined for 65 points. In Game 2, they combined for just 16. So it's going to take a collective effort on both teams. But besides the fact that Tatum did, to me, have an up and down game, this was not all on him.
Good?
Yeah, I mean, I think they said it all. I think it comes down to the role players, and I think Tatum going 6 for 9 from 3 was a great start and a step in the right direction. He'll shoot better at home. I don't mind the mid-range shots because you have to shoot those in the playoffs. You have to be a 3-level scorer because the defense is going to come. But I would like to see him take those middies in the second half. Early on in the game, threes and rim, establish your presence, establish that you're here. You're going to get to the free throw line. You put the onus on the referees early, right? Maybe you get Dre in foul trouble, maybe Steph's reaching in, things of that nature. But you also let your teammates know that, hey, when I drive and they converge, I'm willing to kick it out. And I think that's what he did in game 1, where he only took 17 shots, right? A lot of them were contested, a lot of them were tough around the basket. But the amount of shots he was creating for others is what really won in that game. And that's what allowed Derek White to be comfortable. That's what allowed Al Horford to have an impact in the game. And that's what's going to allow Pritchard and the rest of the guys to be successful.
Well, I think what you pointed out, CJ, a little bit earlier when you talked about, you pointed to Draymond acknowledging that he was a bit lazy and wasn't closing out on Al Horford in game 1, facilitated Al Horford making a lot of those shots because a lot of them were barely contested. That's number one. And I get exactly what you're saying. But number two, I'm going to go back to J.J. Redick, and I'm going to ask you, sir, to be careful because when you misrepresent what I say, you ain't as good at doing that as I am. You don't want to start that trend, okay? Because I'll get you. Now, let me tell you something right now.
What did I misrepresent, Stephen?
I did not say they came out complacent. What I said was the level of complacency that appeared in game 2 was absent in game 1. They were up 15. Golden State was up 15 midway through the third quarter in game 1. And the urgency that the Boston Celtics played with, storming back and making it a 30-point difference, going down from down 15 to up 15 in the fourth quarter. I said that there was complacency once Golden State got up in game 2 that I didn't see in game 1. Because I didn't say they came out complacent. I didn't do that. I'm just saying once they were down in midway through the third quarter, it was like, hey, we got game 1.
The first time you said, I'm going to review the tape because I review all our tapes.
That's all I said that.
No, I review all our tapes. I review all our interactions.
You do.
I know you twist my words. And I'm going to go back to the beginning of what you said. And what I heard was they were complacent in game 2. You did not clarify or qualify that once they made that run. The point I want to make, I just want to make one point from my perspective because I've lived on the other side of one of those Golden State runs, as has CJ. And there is something that is so deflating about being in a tightly contested game and then having Steph Curry hit 3 straight threes, having Jordan Poole hit a couple threes, and then a half-court heave. The momentum, I don't necessarily always agree with the momentum takes that people give, but there is something about that Golden State Warriors team, historically, at home especially, when they start knocking down those shots, it kills all of your own momentum. It kills all of your own intensity. Like, it is completely deflating.
Question. And I throw this out to both of y'all because, again, y'all play. Y'all are elite. I got it. The thing that I pay attention to, like, for example, when Boston came back from 15 down and they went up 15, you know what I found myself saying about Golden State? Well, I understand you couldn't stop them, but damn, what the hell they doing stopping you? In other words, if you got a cushion, and you can score. I understand the momentum shift that you're talking about. I mean, CJ's done it himself. You've done it yourself. Obviously, CJ played with Dame Dollar. We know what he can bring to the table, particularly in big moments. But when you have a cushion and a team is coming at you and they're just draining shots from all over the place, my mentality is, well, you do get the ball back. It's not like they score and you don't get the ball. You could score your damn self, particularly when you have that kind of a cushion. Are we wrong in bringing that up from time to time? Because, again, if you've got a potent enough offense, that could stop the bleeding.
Stephen, I hold that thought because we went really long. We did about 2 countdowns in this A block, so let's keep going
just
here.
Coming
up here on First Take, some news to get into. Quinn Snyder's out of Utah, so does that leave someone on this set in an Empire state of mind for Donovan Mitchell? And the Warriors even the series despite a poor shooting night from Klay Thompson. So what's going on with the play of Klay? We'll discuss that as well. The fellas sticking around. Just getting started.